Well, this is always one of my favorite times of the year. An album has dropped that I've been waiting to talk about from a band that I've been like super anticipating their next release. So yeah, it's like the stars align and everything's kind of coming true. So let's just talk about this one. The Sleeping City by An Abstract Illusion. So, An Abstract Illusion is a progressive death metal from Sweden, forming around 2007. They got their first album of Illuminating the Path in 2016, and it was with their sophomore album of Woe that really turned my head. You know, Woe is still one of my favorite progressive death metal records of all time. You know, the more I listen to it, the more I realize just how much I absolutely adore and love that record. Like, the amount of space that they give to really powerful and moving moments. Like, they're doing to progressive metal what Haken was doing for the landscape back in like the early 2010s. It was very exciting, very new, very fresh, while still being very immediate. And yes, it's complex and it's technical, but really it's the spirit that I really have found myself attracted to. So here we come to the third record of The Sleeping City, and I was ready. You know, like, it was one of those like, just take the wheel, I'm giving my body over to you, just have your way with me. And I was not disappointed in the slightest. One of the things that I really do enjoy about this record is the structure. You know, we have Black Murmur opening the album and we've got 11 minutes. Then we've got about 3 tracks that are around the 7 to 8 minutes, as like, actually they all kind of like circle around the 8-minute marks, you know, Like a Geyser Ever Erupting is at just under 8 minutes. And then the longest one of that is Frostflower at 8 minutes and 14 seconds. So they're all kind of around the same length. And then we get the two powerhouses of Emmett and The Sleeping City, both being, again, around the 10 to 11 minute mark. So like, this whole album is structured incredibly well, and it's one of the big highlights because it makes for a lot of these dense tracks to be a lot more digestible. And, you know, it allows me to chew the fat a little bit more knowing how this album is structured, because it does flow from track to track extremely well, to the point where I almost lose track of where we are in the track list. So yeah, they did a fantastic job of structuring this album. The album opens up with an 11-minute epic of Black Murmur. And man, it just solidified everything that I love about this band. They're aggressive. They are balls to the wall insane. They know when to ratchet up to 11. But on the same token, they know how to make the atmosphere of the music work very well for them. They know how to really put down a firm foundation for everything else to be built upon. And, you know, even though I love the keyboards and I love the guitars, I absolutely love the soaring soundscapes of the vocals, it's the atmosphere that really hits me hard, and it's within the synths that I think this album really shines. I love some of those smaller moments that are peppered throughout this album that allow for the rest of the album to breathe and to really stretch their legs. And man, that first epic really opens up this album like no other. And this is continued on with the second track of No Dreams Beyond Empty Horizons, where I'm almost feeling like a My Arms Your Hearst of Opeth, you know, that early atmospheric, very guttural style within this shorter track of, 8 minutes. And I love, once again, how the atmosphere builds within this track. I love how that soaring and dripping synth is found on there. Like the synth from like the late 70s, early 80s that I feel like prog metal really hasn't had a lot of time with. That's what I love about this. You know, they're really trying and experimenting new things. And I think they're really finding a lot of success within a lot of these experiments. But again, bringing it back, it's those build-ups and those playouts that I absolutely adore. The third track of Like a Geyser Ever Erupting has this moment in around the, 4:30, I bookmarked that because I wanted to talk about it. That just shows the drumming going full tilt, the whole band just building this energy around it to this amazing crescendo at the end, you know, and this is what I love about progressive tech metal, you know, tech metal, death metal. It's the buildups and the payoffs, you know, they build up these tracks to such a big extent that they don't just let it waste. They don't just let it fall apart. there's this really realized crescendo at the end that's waiting for you as a little treat when you get to the final play out of this. Then we come to the fourth track of Frostflower, and it reminds me of Burden from Opeth. You know, it's a little bit more of a somber track. It's a little bit more of like a breather before we get to the final three tracks that are just bam, bam, bam. It's somber, it's light, and I really enjoy how airy this track is and how much of a deep breath this is before we get into Emmett and the title track of The Sleeping City. Both of these tracks, the Emmett and The Sleeping City, are kind of like the two other big mini epics on this record, and this is where this album really does shine. Again, I don't want to be a broken record or being a dead horse, but where this album does shine, it's that atmosphere, and I feel like in Emmett, this is where the guitars are really taking center stage, and I love how they're able to both blend the atmosphere as well as taking the soaring kind of front and center aspect of that, and they're able to kind of like go back and forth between the two very quickly and very effectively. You got Silver Fields, which is kind of like the little interlude between the two, and then the title track of The Sleeping City. What a powerful way to go out. Like this track really does summarize the whole album for me, and it hits hard, it hits gnarly, and once again, we have the atmosphere of the keyboards blended with the synths kind of being the big overlay powerhouse there with the soaring guitar works, and everything works together in the end. So overall, I have been loving this record. I will say, as a little bit of a point of criticism about this album, I don't like this quite as much as I loved Woe. Like, I still think Woe is their best record. This album is really friggin' good, but Woe reached higher highs for me. And the only knock I would give Woe is kind of the structure was a little bit, I don't know, there was a little bit of like the last two tracks didn't quite feel ready. Like I felt like they were tacked on at the end. Whereas this, the structure is amazing. They definitely stuck the landing in that sense. And they took a lot of things that they learned from Woe and expanded upon it. But this one I would feel is much more of a technical record and a lot more of a, I don't know, sit down and think about, all the riffs that are going on within the guitar works and all the meaty licks that are going on with that. Whereas Woe was much more of a emotional album, and it was more within the atmospheres and the buildups and payoffs that I really attributed and loved about that record. Now, I don't want to compare, apples to oranges in that sense. They're both delicious and I both love them, but it's funny, after listening to this record, I always go back and listen to Woe. Whereas when I listen to Woe, I don't necessarily feel like I have to listen to The Sleeping City. But that being said, I still think this is one of the best progressive metal records we have gotten this year. Like, I highly recommend this to anybody that loves progressive metal and can stomach a little bit of the harsher vocals in that sense. Because, man, when the harsher vocals hit, they hit hard. So yeah, for me, this was an absolute treat. It did not disappoint. Let me be very clear. And I had very high expectations for this record, and it met the expectations. I wouldn't say it necessarily exceeded them, but I mean, when you're given a good meal, I don't want to go back to the, the chef and be like, you didn't really completely blow my socks off with that, This was an amazing time and one that I will 100% recommend. So yeah, I think my final rating for this record will be The Sleeping City by an Abstract Illusion. It's an album I would absolutely pick up in physical format. This is a great one. This is a one run, don't walk to go and listen to. I have been enjoying this record, and even though I've had this record for a couple of months now, like I got it way back in August, I still feel like there's so many nooks and crannies of this record that I still need to explore and still need to root out. So yeah, I applaud this one for the boys. You've got another banger on your hands. This is an Abstract Illusion firing on all cylinders and proving that they are the forerunners as the kings of the modern progressive metal landscape. So yeah, well done, boys. I can't wait to hear what you've got in store next. And yeah, that's what I've got for The Sleeping City from an Abstract Illusion. What did you guys think about this record? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, please let me know. Commenting down below. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. So I want to thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.